Sziasztok, kedves nyelvtanulók! A mai angolóra anyaga Fine Arts and Funding Arts, vagyis az igazi szép művészet és a művészetnek a finanszírozása. Hát ezek már eleve kérdéseket vetnek fel, és valóban az emelt szintű érettségi szóbelén szóba jöhet, mint vitatéma például, de képleírásnál is, vagy a vizsga elején a beszélgetésnél, illetve felsőfokú nyelvvizsgán is előjöhet az a szókincs, az a téma, amit ma tárgyalunk. Hát csapjunk is a lovak közé. Még egy mondat. A mai órán nem annyira kérdéseket fogok átvenni, hanem körüljárom a témát, a hasznos szókincset, és ezekből lehet szemezgetni, bármilyen kérdést is kaptok ebben a témában a vizsgán. Illetve mondjuk egy vitakérdést azért megnézzünk érvek ellenérvek kapcsán. So now is the time that I switched into English. Before I start, I'm going to start now, right? And we are going to start with museum types. Everybody knows about art museums, where you can find a lot of paintings and statues. You know about history museums. I'm sure you've been to a lot of them. Well, there are some specialty museums. For example, if you go to Vienna, you find a butterfly museum. Or in Budapest, there used to be, I wonder if there still is, a doll museum. So these are specialty museums, science centers, zoos, but we can count here aquariums, botanic gardens, arboretums, nature centers, and historic sites. What is a historic site? For example, here in Budapest, Aquincum, okay, that's a historic site. If we talk about art, let me give you a little atmosphere of art. So I brought you a picture, a painting here from Claude Monet, Water Lilies. Okay, I show you the picture. Now, this painting is one of a series of paintings. Claude Monet was an impressionist painter, and he constructed a beautiful, huge garden around his home, of course. He had a lake, and he hired some gardeners who grew water lilies, and they positioned the water lilies in the lake in a way that it is pleasant to paint them. But you also know about the special Japanese bridge in this garden. There are paintings about that as well. Now, water lilies, well, this one is considered to represent his finest work. Monet had extraordinary skill at plein air painting. Plein air is a French word. It stands for outdoor painting. Plein air painting. He had a feeling for color and light. He attempted to capture the constantly changing natural light and color. When you talk about a piece of art, let's say a painting, but it can be about a photo as well, the word capture is a key word because every artist tries to capture a moment, a feeling, and they try to give back through a piece of art with their own approach to it, with their own feelings about it. So Monet attempted to capture the constantly changing natural light and color. As he mingles water and sky, Monet creates a peaceful meditation within flowery, watery surrounding. Okay? So create an atmosphere, to create a view, a feeling. These are keywords. And if we talk about other pictures, well, in this painting, you can really see this game of light, of water and sky, okay? The sky is mirrored in the water, so this is why it's really interesting. This is why it has an artistic value. And if we talk about other pictures, it's useful to use expressions like in the foreground, in the background, at the top of the picture, at the bottom of the picture, in the right-hand side corner of the picture. You can use these words in like expressions of color, pastel colors, natural colors, vivid colors. So capture, create, have a skill, have a special technique. This is how we can talk about a painting or a piece of art. Now, what types of painting are there? Like oil painting, watercolor painting, pastel painting, acrylic painting, and there are many more, but these are the most important ones, well, most well-known ones. Painting genres, there is history painting. Many of you have seen huge paintings at museums about a war scene, or kings, the coronation ceremony. Portrait art, genre painting, which represents scenes of everyday life. For example, the painting with the title of Lunch of Monet, or Breakfast on the Grass, must be that. Landscape painting and still life painting. What is still life painting? This is what we call in Hungarian csendélet, still life painting, okay? Still life painting. So this is what we can find at museums, at art museums. And now you might get a question like, why do we go to museums? Why is it good? Well, first of all, this is a meaningful leisure activity. We can admire pieces of art and get a new perspective, a new outlook of things if we go to admire pieces of art. The primary role of a museum is to engage and educate, and schools heavily rely on museums to enhance their curriculum. They take a lot of groups of students and pupils to museums to look around and study from what they can find, discover there, and it's a really nice way of learning. From tourism's point of view, museums often have exhibits that are specific to the area where they are situated. So if you go and visit a city, like if you go abroad, it's always a good idea to just have a look at, well, not just have a look at the landscapes of the city, but also to go to visit some museums, because they will give you more of an insight in the city's history in the area. Okay? Every piece of art tells a story and means something beneath the surface. So if you just take a moment to have a closer look, you can appreciate the artist's approach. In an art museum, and if you go to history museum, it can broaden your mind. You can get more of an insight into a historical era. Nice. Now, another branch of art is theater. And there are a lot of people who like theaters. We call them theater goers. Like, it derives from the verb go, okay, to go to the theater, and theater goer. Nice expression. Theater goers. Now, why is it good to go to the theater? There are many reasons that theater goers would enlist to say why they like to go to the theater. Seeing actors on stage live, moving, talking, sometimes singing and dancing, well, this is really exciting. If you talk about the theater, you need vocabulary like characters, the set, okay, the things that you find on a stage, for example, the paintings of buildings, so this is the set, okay, the set. Costumes, sound and lights, audience, and the play itself. We call színdarab. That's the play, okay? And it can be a tragedy or a comedy. So it's really interesting to see a story told on stage. A stage production, if it's done well, can transport the audience into a different world. Now, cinema or theater. To answer this question, just try to compare seeing a picture of the Eiffel Tower to actually being there. There's a huge difference. Theater also contributes to education and literacy. Just think of it. It really requires sharp attention and agile language skills. So these are the things that you can use if you answer questions about the theater. Maybe it's a good idea to prepare with a play that you have seen at the theater, just short, briefly tell the plot and why you liked it. And there comes the opera. If you are asked about opera, you might use expressions like the singers, of course, the choir, chorus, orchestra, the group of musicians there, okay? Orchestra, the violinists, and there are a lot of other musical instruments. To the, what we say, these are presented to the accompaniment of the orchestra, the zenekari kíséret, accompaniment of the orchestra. And if we talk about concerts, for example, classical music concerts, we need the expressions of conductor. Some advertising say, we present this concert with the finest, with one of the finest conductors, with one of the finest soloists, talented musicians with a fine technique. Okay, a concert can be given by a soloist, given by an orchestra. They play from their own repertoire, a French word, but we use the same word in Hungarian. Well, of course, to perform, don't forget this expression, to perform. And mainly that's about concerts and opera. If you are really keen on opera and classical music concerts, you can have more of a research online about this topic. Now let's get to a debate question that you might have at the higher level final exam. The debate statement is, government investments in the arts is a waste of money. How provoking, a waste of money. This money should be invested in public services. Of course, there is always something better to spend your money on. Why spend on art? So this is basically our statement. There are pro and contra arguments, and I will start with the contra arguments. So what do you say if you think that the government should invest into art, should fund artists and art in a country? Well, arts are an essential part of any country's culture. Art programs and organizations generate economic activity. Art programs are part of a vibrant civil society and are therefore an important part of any democracy. It is difficult for many arts institutions to generate much profit, so without some help from the government, many theaters and other such places may have to close down. But many people have great pleasure in going to concerts and theaters, so it is important that there should be institutions which provide this form of entertainment, this joy. Like, just think of all the people in today's lives, how overstressed everybody is, sorry. We should protect every source of, every way of relaxing. We should provide relaxing ways for people, or relaxing hobbies. Like, art is something really relaxing, because it provides joy. Now let's see some pro argument, like the government shouldn't invest into arts because it's a waste of money. If you think this, you might say if it is widely recognized that the arts are essential for our culture, then there should be no problem financing them from voluntary sources. It's an argument. Some people say this: if the government funds art, it could use funding to promote propaganda, political propaganda. Public services are the things such as hospitals. Yeah, because in the statement there is public services as well. So when you debate, when you argue in favor or against, then you have to include every point of the statement, and public services were mentioned. So these are the things such as hospitals, roads, and schools, and these things determine the quality of life. Funding from the government will come with restrictions to the types of art artists can create. So the problem with the government funding arts is, first of all, a political propaganda. Public services have key importance, we shouldn't forget that, and restrictions in the artistic performances. And another one, arts should be able to draw a large enough audience to be self-sustaining, which means if a branch of art is not interesting, it shouldn't be funded. financed, sponsored by the government. One can agree with this, one can disagree, but these are the possible arguments that you can use. Okay, so far so good about a debate, and for the last topic, I thought of talking to you about literature. You might get this topic when you describe a picture. Maybe you will have to compare two pictures, like reading as a hobby and watching films, or literature can come up in many other ways. Now, what is literature? It refers to writing considered to be an art form. Literature is writing with artistic and intellectual value that sometimes deploys language in ways that differ from the ordinary usage. If you think about poems, they use the language in a way that we ordinarily don't do. Literature is classified according to whether it is fiction or non-fiction, whether it is poetry or prose. Fiction can be further distinguished according to major forms such as the novel, regény, okay? Be careful with the word novel, because it's really, really similar to a Hungarian word, novella. But it's not the same. Novella is the shorter form of fiction. We say regény, and in English it's a novel, okay? The Hungarian novella is short story in English. Don't forget that. Don't mix up the two. These are two different things, okay? So, fiction, novel, short story, and what did I say? Drama. Drama contains dialogues, conversations, okay? So that's the difference between, between the different types of fiction. And such works are often categorized according to historical periods. Now, these days we live amidst a gushing river of popular culture, of screens and technology, so one might easily ask, why read literature? This will be easy for you to answer if you're really into literature. I'm into literature. I really like reading, especially fine literature. It's such a pleasure. And whenever I really have free time just for myself, I grab a good book and I sit down and read. So why is it good? Reading great literature exercises the imagination. We enjoy stories. It is a pleasure to meet characters and live in their world and to experience their joys and sorrows. A good novel, a really well-written novel, can capture you so much that you forget about the surrounding world and you feel like you're in the story. An active imagination helps us to perceive truth, make value judgments, deal with the complexities of life in a creative way. So it's very useful to read. Reading literature transports us out of our current context, this is what I just mentioned, into other ages and places. By reading novels, you don't just get to know a story. Many writers also include historical knowledge. You get more information, more knowledge about how people dressed up, what were their habits in the past. It's exciting, really, to see how different habits they had. So much different from our today's life. Reading literature enables us to see the world through the eyes of others. It trains the mind to be flexible and to understand other points of view, which is really important. This is why education uses reading. Reading literature nurtures and develops the power of sympathetic insight. Great works of literature have played a fundamental role in shaping society. Reading literature improves our facility with language and vocabulary. You can easily make the difference between children who read a lot and those who never really read, or children whose parents read a lot of stories to them, and those who never listened to those stories read out by their parents. There's a clear difference between the two. Reading literature requires conscious thinking. So there are a lot of adventures of reading literature. I recommend you taking up this hobby. It's not just good for all these advantages, for all these reasons, but also if you read literature in English or in the foreign language that you are learning, it will highly improve your linguistic skills. So I wish you good luck with reading and preparing to your exams. See you next time. Goodbye.